This day in sports history. It's April 7th, and on this day in 1935, Gene Sarazen hit his shot heard round the world at the Masters. It's one of the most famous shots in the history of the game, if not at the very top of the list. Here's Gene himself talking about his famous shot.
My second shot was 235 yards from the green. The lie was not too good. It was very close. And when you have a close lie, it's hard to get it into the air. Just before the green, there was a pond about 25 feet wide. I had to carry that. So I decided to take a 4-wood. Somehow or other, the minute I hit that ball, I felt something was in the air. All of a sudden, I saw that ball drop, and I never had such a thrill in all my life. It was in the hole. Crowds started jumping around, and I began to think of what I had to do to tie. Double eagle 2. What a thrill.
He parred the final 3 holes to force a playoff, and in the only time the Masters decided the winner in this way, Sarazen and Craig Wood played a 36-hole playoff on Monday that Sarazen won by 5 shots. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have 0 regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. Let's go to 1963 and the 27th edition of the Masters. And there's a nice little segue here that a now 61-year-old Sarazen became the oldest player to make the cut. It was the final time he would play the weekend at Augusta. Fred Couples now holds that distinction after making the cut in 2023 as a 63-year-old. But enough about the old guys. This was a young man's tournament. 23-year-old Jack Nicklaus already had one major win after his performance at the 1962 U.S. Open. This was only the second time he played at the Masters as a professional. He was 5 shots off the lead after day 1, but he went low on Friday with a 6-under 66, and he put himself in contention just 1 shot back. Saturday was a bit of a struggle for every golfer on the course, and Nicklaus's 2-over 74 was still good enough to take a 1-shot lead heading into Sunday. Just like 16 would be a pivotal hole for his final Masters in '86, in 1963, Nicklaus took the lead for good when he rolled in this putt.
Jack from 12 feet away gets his birdie 2. He's now 2 under par, 2 strokes ahead of Snead, who's finished, 2 ahead of Lima, who's up ahead, and 2 ahead of Boris, who's playing with him.
Tony Lima managed to apply some pressure, though. He had a nice approach to the 18th green and left himself 18 feet for a birdie 3.
This is a very important putt for Tony Lima. Down, down, down. And it drops. A birdie 3. And all of a sudden, Tony Lima's name is at the top of the scoreboard. He's in with a 287, 1 under par.
Nicklaus came to the 18th needing a par to win, but his drive drifted left and wound up in a boggy area. Due to the conditions, they were playing lift clean in place, and Nicklaus was able to better his position and move the ball to drier ground. His shot to the green was not great, leaving himself a lengthy putt for birdie.
And here's Nicklaus now in his big moment. He's 35 feet away. The line shows 2 bends in it. He need not sink, but it must be close, and it's rolling down, down, and beyond. He runs 3 feet, 3 feet beyond the hole. Now this one he must sink to win today. He does. It's in. He's the new Masters champion.
On this day in 1985, it was a Week 7 showdown in the USFL between the New Jersey Generals and the Houston Gamblers. The game was billed as Doug Flutie versus Jim Kelly, but it was Herschel Walker who lit up the scoreboard and inked up the score sheet. On the first Generals possession, he ripped off a record setter. Here's Keith Jackson calling the action alone that day for ABC.
As they shift again, Bowers coming to the near side, and as they shift, they go back into the I formation. And Walker again. Slants it off tackle, goes for a first down. He may go all the way. No flags. Touchdown.
That 88-yard TD run was the longest in USFL history. He amassed 233 yards on the day, another USFL record, and the Generals beat the Gamblers 31-25. And since we're talking about secondary leagues, how about this story? On this day in 1976, a frog strangler of a thunderstorm popped up in San Antonio, Texas. It rained buckets. Well, that shouldn't have been a problem for the San Antonio Spurs, who were playing at home that night against the Indiana Pacers. Only it was a problem. This was the final regular season game for the Spurs in what would be the final season of the ABA. The rain was coming down so hard that the HemisFair arena started leaking. But this wasn't just a drip, drip, drip kind of a leak. No, this was water pouring from the roof onto the playing floor. The game was paused, and the Spurs staff went into action, grabbing some tablecloths from a local catering company and mopping up the floor as best they could. The game had to be finished on this night since it was the final regular season game and the playoffs started 2 days later. They had no choice but to play on in the rain. They taped the tablecloths to the floor and played the entire second half with them there. Here's the Spurs public relations man, Wayne Witt, with the story.
But anyway, they said no pressure defense outside and no fast breaking. And I talked to Kobe Dietrich, who played on that team, remembered the game, and he said, we lied. But they finished the second half, played the second half with tablecloths taped to the floor. I would say probably 12 to 15 feet from the sideline toward midcourt was covered with tablecloths. And I remember women sitting there with umbrellas, open umbrellas. Now, I know it's supposed to be bad luck when you're inside, but I think that night it was good luck. And we had some photographs of these women sitting there with these big smiles on their faces under their umbrellas.
It is kind of hard to imagine anything remotely happening like that now, at any level of basketball. The Spurs won the game 96-75 in the rain. On this day in 1928, an unlikely substitution literally saved the New York Rangers and eventually helped them win their first Stanley Cup a few days later. The Rangers were in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Maroons. It was Game 2 of the best-of-5 series, with Montreal the winners of Game 1. Scoreless in the opening minutes of the second period, Rangers goalie Lorne Chabot took a puck to the face just above his eye. And remember, goalies were not wearing masks yet. Blood gushed from the injury, and Chabot was hustled off the ice and rushed to a local hospital. Head coach Lester Patrick had a problem. He did not have a backup goalie. Rules of the day are similar to what they are now in that you could insert an emergency goalie, but it had to be approved by the other team. Patrick knew the goalie for the Ottawa Senators, Alex Connell, was at the arena that night, and he let Maroons coach Eddie Girard know that he was going to go get him. Girard said, nope. There was also a minor league goalie in attendance that night. Patrick offered him as a substitute. Girard vetoed that as well. Patrick was livid at that point, so he decided to suit up and insert himself as the goalie. Patrick had been a defenseman for 20 years prior to joining the Rangers as manager and coach, and he had played a little goalie in a few emergency situations when he was a player. So he grabbed Chabot's sweaty and bloody gear and he skated out to the pipes, his silver hair glistening in the lights. Following a 40-minute delay, the game restarted. Those who reported on the game said it looked like the 44-year-old Patrick flailed around the net like a wounded duck, but the Rangers played cautiously on the offensive end and were aggressive in protecting Patrick. Montreal were only able to get off long shots that Patrick was able to stop easily, and at the end of the second period, the game was still scoreless. In the third, the Rangers scored the game's first goal in the first 30 seconds. It stayed that way for 13 minutes until a weak shot by the Maroons slid slowly through the 5-hole of Patrick, and the game was tied. It eventually went to sudden death overtime, and in the OT, Montreal sent a waist-high shot hurtling at Patrick. He dropped the cumbersome goalie stick and caught the puck with two hands. Minutes later, the Rangers got the game winner from Frank Boucher, tying the series at a game apiece. New York players skated to their coach in the net, lofted him on their shoulders, and carried him off the ice as a hero. The Rangers were given permission by the league the following day to bring in Joe Miller, who had played with the New York Americans. Lester Patrick returned to the bench, and the Rangers won the next two games to win their first ever Stanley Cup. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If Nintendo's Mario was a real person, his standing jump would be 5 times that of the world record. According to physics calculations conducted by Tech Radar, Mario is capable of a 25-foot jump in the air. The current world record is 5.5 feet. Pretty impressive for the little plumber whose real-life height would be 5 feet 1 inch. Also, his brick-breaking ability requires an estimated 16,681 newtons of force, which is roughly the force of a 1-ton object hitting a solid wall at 40 miles per hour. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.